Hello, this is Coach Tim Campbell, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show, where we're talking with successful business owners to hear of their stories of their journey to building their business. And because we know that achieving success in business is not something that we do on our own, we're not recognizing the folks that have helped us along that journey. I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from the marketing industry with us today. My guest is a former Miss Indiana competitor and sits on one of their local boards. She is working to obtain her pilot's license, and she worked full-time on her career during her undergrad and still graduated early with honors. Wow. Today, I am so excited to have Ashley join us on the show. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Tim. So excited for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, let's start, Ashley, with having you introduce ourselves or introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of your personal story, like where you were born, where you live, about your family, and some of your hobbies.
I love it. I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, but I was actually born in Southern California. I always joke with my parents, I love the beach and coulda, shoulda, woulda stayed there so I could have lived by the ocean, but that's okay. So really more raised in Indianapolis, though we lived a few places before that. But my husband and my daughter now, my 9-month-old and our 2 dogs, we live in downtown Fishers. I've been married. This will be my 5-year anniversary, which is really exciting. And it goes by quick. Cannot believe that my daughter has grown as quick as she has. And goodness, it's so funny. I always joke that, I started my company accidentally. My degree, ironically enough, is actually in biblical studies. And I worked in mega church world for a very long time, was living in South Florida because of course I had to get some sunshine in there. My husband and I were engaged in long distance. And I remembered at that point, working in mega churches, I think a lot of people think that when you work in a church, it's like, oh, you're just creating little booklets. But our church was about 50,000 people and a few hundred on staff. So definitely kind of more like a nonprofit at that size. And I remember at that point that I was really involved in marketing there just for a lot of the events that we were doing as a ministry. And so that was one of my core responsibilities. My role was making sure that we were getting people at events. And so there came a turning point when we were still engaged, and my husband and I we really wanted to be close to family so that when we would start a family, we would have that access. And so ultimately, the hardest challenge I think having in ministry was just not feeling like I had the full authority and autonomy to really be able to just help people the way that I wanted to help them. And I think in an organization that size too, having those opportunities can be challenging. So moved back to Indianapolis, where I actually began my career in sales and property management. So I started leasing office space, was responsible for getting paid on commission in addition to our base. And so that was where the trajectory of my love for marketing began, because I need to find a way to get leads to fill my pipeline. So yes. The rest is history. I got very good at it. I actually started doing marketing within the company, wanted to move up in the company, and then the plans for expansion within that organization changed. And so that was kind of at that point, began experience. I was working with other agencies, nights and weekends, doing marketing in our organization. And then ultimately opted at that point to decide to go out on my own when I realized there wasn't going to be opportunity. I was interviewing for different roles, didn't feel like I could have that impact. And that was how Onya was born. So that's the backstory, Tim.
Fantastic. So Ashley, tell us a funny story that your family likes to share about you that you'd be willing to share with our audience.
Oh my goodness. So I have always marched to the beat of my own drum. And the story that one of my friends always tells, I don't quite remember it this way, but I think it rings true with the way that my family saw everything happen. But I remember when I met my now best friend and one of my closest family friends, we were actually in 5th grade. We were in the school musical. And the way that she always tells the story was, again, so it's so funny because I was very nervous in that phase. In middle school, you're insecure, you're wanting to make connections. And the way she tells it is, I guess I just pranced. I was in Annie, and I had just gotten a different role because somebody dropped out. So it was one of the leads. And I guess I pranced on stage the way my friend says and said, I'm ready. And like flipped my hair back a little bit and put my arms like my side and had like a power pose. And she said in that moment, that girl, we're going to be best friends. And now years later, we still are today. So it's funny because I definitely don't think that's how it happened, but that's how everyone says it happened. So I guess I gotta believe that.
So then it was very natural to be a Miss Indiana contestant then, if you already had the prance.
That's right, Tim. That's exactly right. I love it.
Awesome. So you told us a little bit of the backstory on your business, but give us a little bit more of a perspective on when did you have that confidence that you knew that you could run your own business?
Oh my goodness. So it was really scary at first. I mean, I wanted to just keep it a side hustle. I felt like playing small at that point. It was a lot easier because I originally started really as a freelancer. That was kind of the trajectory to freelancer, to solopreneur, to building a team with contractors, and then building a team with employees. And being a freelancer felt very, very safe. And so I remember at that point too, the other thing, I was still doing a lot of passion projects, and it was just really hard for me, I think, at that point to commit to one thing. And I still, I really struggled with having a degree and having all of this experience in one area and then still just making that career shift. A lot of imposter syndrome. Who am I to start this business? Can I even do that? I have a Bible degree. I mean, who does that kind of a thing? Were all the thoughts that were running in my head. And I remember that was when the confidence came from, I met my first mentor online, and she lives in Dallas, Texas. Actually, she's a very, very successful home healthcare company. And I just remember her saying, do you want the trajectory of your life to be based on a hobby or based on a business where you can create a lasting legacy for your family? And I said, oof, was a really good question to ask. And I think that was the turning point. And so that confidence came about really by doing the next right thing and taking baby step. I think on the outside, we always see these people with these overnight success stories, quote unquote, but those success stories are always years and years in the making. And so I think the confidence ultimately came by just taking the next step, whether it was working and really specializing in something. That was one step that I took. Another was really kind of expanding and diversifying our client base, because I felt very safe doing the same thing over and over again with certain clients. And so ultimately, I think the business grew as I grew, and my capacity expanded as a leader, because really as the leader, you are the cap of what your people could rise to. And so working with that mentor and really taking those baby steps was what allowed us to have the growing company that we do today, that is, of course, is ever evolving.
Fantastic. And what's her name?
Her name is Dr. Courtney Baker.
Fantastic. Well, awesome. I appreciate you sharing about Dr. Courtney. So tell us more about Onya.
Oh my goodness. Onya. So speaking of those little steps of confidence, we were formerly known as It Media. And so It Media meant for all things online marketing, we're it. But what was really in alignment, what I've tried to do and been encouraged to do and see more fulfillment in within our company, has been really zoning in on exactly how we can best serve our clients. And I realized I really wanted to be more of a specialist and not a generalist. But our core foundation at the pillar of everything we do is that we want to help clients grow. We want to use marketing. That is the vehicle that we use to help our clients hit their goals and stay on that trajectory. And so that was how our tagline, Onya Mark, Get Set, Let's Grow, came about, was really acting not as just another agency, but as a marketing partner that got to play a critical role in helping companies do just that. And so being able to do that was where I really realized and just saw a gap in online advertising, and just so much opportunity, so much mispractice, and just lack of transparency. And that's another thing that is so important to me in the work that we do. I just saw a lot of ick in the advertising space, and I wanted to change it. I wanted to be able to really work with clients that we could help to have those transparent conversations, to tell them and be the person that I would see all the time where, and I think people always, I don't know, maybe I'm naive, and that I do think people mean well, but I think a lot of times other agencies just have a really difficult time setting expectations with clients and communicating directly and telling them the hard things on the front end so that they can be set up for success. And so that's really, really important to me. And one of the reasons too that I think inadvertently we stepped into that space was to be able to boldly help lead clients better in an industry where I feel that they were very underserved.
That's fantastic. So, Ashley, tell us, and you may have already alluded to it earlier, but tell us of somebody who pushed you or inspired you that that you could do it and have an impact bigger than you thought. What's a story that comes to mind there?
There are so many people, and it's so hard to narrow it down. But I would say the biggest push was for my now coach, Brian. And he was the one, my mentor decided. I still talk to her very frequently, and I'll get to see her in a couple weeks and fly down to Dallas, but she took kind of a back seat from coaching. And that was when I began working with my now coach. And, it was pushing me to step off the ledge. And I remember, I would say that big push was when I did not want to leave the security of my job, did not want to do it. I was very comfortable there, and I was relatively successful. I mean, not relatively, I just wasn't fulfilled in the work that I was doing. But my company was very gracious as I built my business. I was doing it nights and weekends originally. So it was in lunch breaks. Anytime that I wasn't clocked in, I was working. And then they graciously allowed me to go to part-time. So I would cram everything in. I had Tuesdays and Fridays and weekends and nights to work on my business. I got a little bit more balance back. But I did that for about 6 months. I did this back and forth thing. And my coach was like, so when are you going to grow up and choose? When are you actually, are you going to be content with being comfortable and doing this forever? Or do you want to actually do something amazing and know that really failing is not actually taking the leap to try? And so that was the push that I needed, because I would have probably towed that line. I would have kept saying, when this happens, then I'll do this. And that was one of the defining pivotal moments for me where I finally took that leap.
Yeah, that is awesome. There's a phrase that goes something like, the side hustle, if it's only a side hustle, it will never become your business, right? It'll never become your career, because you've got a foot in two different paths and you're always juggling back and forth. So I love that you got that nudge and pushed you outside of your comfort zone to take that leap. So Ashley, what's been the biggest learning that you've had as a business owner?
Oh my goodness, what isn't, Tim? That's the honest truth. What isn't? I would say though, probably the biggest learning and the hardest learning, and I know that you see this working with clients, and if you're listening to this and you're not working or connecting with Tim, let me tell you, you need a coach, because the biggest challenge that I have had during my years is realizing, like I kind of alluded to earlier, that I am the cap of what the company can do or accomplish. And if I don't deal with my personal things, if I don't deal with my capacity to grow as a leader, to manage people, to be able to take risks, but also mitigate and manage that risk, I cannot achieve my goals. And that begins and ends with me. And so I think there's maybe not everyone has this, but I did have this perception that, you could separate those things for a little bit. And especially with the side hustle, right? When you're working on the side, it's like you have this box and you have this box, and you tend to compartmentalize a little bit. And as a business owner, I just don't believe that's possible. I'm a huge proponent of work-life integration, because all of those things bleed into that. So I would say the biggest challenge was looking at my personal weaknesses, addressing them head on. Things like, I would say one of the biggest ones, to give you a specific example, would be having friendships, but also being a good and effective manager and employing people and doing what's right for the organization and what's right for them. And knowing that sometimes I love working with people, but sometimes there's a lack of alignment there. And there's that bleed over, because on one hand, there's the organization, but then there's the friendships, and that they are very intertwined, but there's distinctions. And if you're not working with somebody on the outside to help you see some of those things, or if you're not really aware of those things, they can be challenging. And that's really been the biggest one, has been people. And I love people. I love team. I love our team. And the biggest challenge is when the organization evolves and adapts, and really making sure that the people that you're surrounding with are the right people on your team to get to where you want to go, not just because you like them the most. And that's a very hard challenge that I have continued to learn and grow as a leader.
Yes, I love it. You mentioned about dealing with your own growth and development. So we like to say that we have to grow into becoming the version of ourself that's able to do the things that our business requires from us, right, to have the successes that we want out of life. And it's so much easier to do, right, to work harder and work longer, but to focus on our own personal growth and development is a lot of work. So I applaud you for taking that and addressing that and focusing on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So Ashley, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So tell us about your biggest challenge during the years, and a fellow business owner who helped you get through that.
Oh my goodness. I would say it really goes back to some of the things that I just shared. I think the biggest challenge has really been hiring and making the right hiring decisions, because to even add more depth to that, I think there is this tendency that we all have, and it's human nature, to spend time with people that are like us, with people that we enjoy being around. And I would say for hire, and what I have learned in hiring, and I made one that really stands out that I did not realize how big of an impact it made. And it was a mishire that I had made. I had just come off of maternity leave. I was very, very eager to have somebody else because we were growing very, very rapidly at that point, even through my maternity leave, which was amazing. I was worried if that would continue and what that would look like. And so I made a very, very quick hire. And where I failed was really focusing on culture during that hire. And, with my past hires I did, and I thought that I had screened that well enough, but I had realized in that moment that I didn't. We didn't do, we mostly did virtual interviews at that point. And the person that I brought on paper was perfect, absolutely perfect acumen, ability. And I was filling the role of a media buyer, which is a very difficult and skilled role, takes a very specific skill set, and it can be learned, but being able to bid for other companies, assessing budgets, there's the analysis side, and then there's also the creative side and the management side. It's very different parts of your brain, I feel, to execute that role well. And I had found a unicorn, or what I thought was a unicorn, who was able to execute well. And again, that was the majority of our business is media buying and ad management. And that was where I needed somebody else. I work with my husband. And so we are media buyers. We have a couple of other contractual media buyers on our team as well. But I was like, I need another full-time person dedicated to this to support me. So it's just not Dallas and I all the time having to go in and be in the business and not on it. And the person that I hired could not have been a worse cultural fit. Great person. I'm sure they will be successful where they go. But there were some major character issues that I had missed. And, it ended up being 3 weeks until I had to cut the cord and say, this is not right. And so I remember just talking actively to Brian about it and just feeling so almost like the carpet got pulled out under me, and just like a bait and switch of thinking like, oh my goodness, I had one thing. But the reason I say, and I give that challenge, is because it disrupted without even realizing. It was only a 3-week period before. And one of those weeks, Tim, we were at a conference. So the person came on, and then the rest of the team was in Southern Florida at a conference, and they were there. So really just 2 weeks in the office. And I could not believe, even in 2 weeks, what that did to our culture, just with subtle things of not getting stuff done, or him wanting to leave early, or not being engaged, and what that did to my team. Then even after the fact, when I had to make that quick decision and rebuild from doing that, it was just crazy in 3 weeks. And so I really leaned on Brian to help me be the leader that I needed to be transparent about what happened. To also, and working in ministry too, I had really struggled with unhealthy accountability, because there's a difference between, and I'd worked in some environments to where I didn't feel like accountability. It was unhealthy in the sense that it started to tarnish your identity as a person and not focus on the role and being direct. And so I really struggled with how to directly tell the team and to hold them to that standard, that because the temptation was because this person was wanting to go home, they were slacking off, they were not hitting deadlines on time, that affected the tone of our entire team. And even though we were only six people in an office, I mean, that one person really has an impact. And so making sure that my ability as a leader to be transparent, but to also hold everyone else to the standard that needs to be there was very, very challenging.
I love that. So there's a phrase, hire slow and fire fast. So I love that once you realized that it was a mistake, that you were quick to correct that mistake. A lot of folks, you talked about cultural fit, right? So a lot of folks make the error of, hiring based on skills and experience, right? Do they fit the job description? Right? And don't take the time to evaluate the cultural fit. So I love that you do that. That the reality is that we're going to make mistakes from time to time, right? But the awesome thing about your situation is that you quickly identified it and did the next right thing. A lot of folks don't even do that cultural fit as part of their interview process. And as your example, exemplifies, is that's the most important thing when we're looking to bring people onto our team is, right, are they going to fit into the culture that we've already established and that everybody loves being a part of? And if not, it doesn't matter how awesome they are, right? As your story shares.
So true. It's one of the easiest things that we almost take for granted because we don't realize. And I think that was really a gift too, because I did not realize how special what we had created and the way that our team worked and functioned was until that happened. So it gave me a refined appreciation, but also that culture is one of those things that I think people talk about. It's really high level and it's hard to get a grasp and really a concrete understanding of what that looks like. And so it's one of those things conceptually, I think we understand, but until you actually have that tactical experience and can recognize good from bad culture, it can be very, very instrumental if we're not aware. And in my opinion, I mean, at this point, my biggest lesson learned from that was I will hire culture over talent any day. Talent within the right culture can be taught, but core values and being able to connect with the team. I mean, it can't be.
You can't teach a cultural fit, right? It either is already there or it's not. And one of the ways to build that in for folks listening, to build that into your interview process is, make sure you've got your culture articulated, right? So that you can share that in the job ad and in the interview process. And basically you're letting people know, right, this is the type of person who's going to be awesome here. And if that's not you, right, don't apply, because we're just going to be wasting each other's time. So I love what you said. You can't teach culture. You can't train people to be a cultural fit. You can train skills and work on them if they're an awesome cultural fit. But if not, don't even waste your time in bringing them in for an interview, because your story shows that you're going to regret it, right?
100%.
So Ashley, if you had to pick three people in your business journey that you're most grateful for being there for you and have helped with your business growth, and more specifically business owners, because we're all about helping and supporting fellow business owners on this show, who would those three people be that you'd like to give shout outs to?
Yeah, it would be Dr. Courtney, Brian, and then my husband, Dallas. And I'll tell you why my husband too in a second. But Dr. Courtney, she was that first mentor and just amazing example of she grew her company and I think she's now in 5 or 6 different states. Like she has expanded and just consistently grown over the years, but she did it all as a single mom on food stamps, which just blows my mind. I know. And what she's built was just so inspiring from the beginning to see her story and for her to hold me accountable and to have the depth of that wisdom to be able to share that. So she was the first, really, if I had not met her, I wouldn't have started the business because I would have still been playing small. Yeah. And then Brian, he was the one that encouraged me to step off the ledge, still continues to be that rock and that support to help me really make sure that I am doing what I need to, but also not being afraid to hold me accountable and be direct, which is hard to find. It's hard to find people that will actually tell you what you need to hear and what's good for your growth and not just what you want to hear and tell you everything's good. And then finally, my husband, he has been he works with me, and it's just been a really big compliment of him supporting me, working with me and the business. And then honoring too, because we, unlike, I see a lot of couples and different people that are in marriages that lead companies. And I've seen tension points of my friends and colleagues that have done that. And Dallas really, really supports me and the vision that we're doing. But it is, at the end of the day, really the vision that I've created. And he's done an amazing job of being able to support that and step in and honor that when it's, which is, I feel, a hard tension for people. And I'm very, very grateful for that and his commitment to helping build something with me.
That is fantastic. I work with a number of partner business owners and a couple of married partner business owners. And to your point, those can be some very challenging relationships to have, both a marriage as well as running, being part of a small business. So that is so awesome that it's working so well for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Ashley, as you think about the next 3 to 5 years, what are the biggest challenges that you see that you're going to face in reaching your overall goals? And who are the type of people that you're going to need to be part of your organization or part of your support network to solve those problems?
Yeah, there are two that are very, very prominent that come to mind. The first is the industry itself that I work in. I tell a lot of our clients that I have to relearn how to do my job every single day. Every single day, there's a change every single day. And it can be challenging too, because clients will have heard something or be fed something. And I'm like, I get it. I feel like I constantly just have to set that expectation. Otherwise it's like, well, this was true one day, but then it's not. And it's just telling them over and over again, and it changes. So not only from setting and managing client expectations can that be a challenge, but also from our systems, our processes, our standard operating procedures have to change. Like, we're looking at them weekly, monthly, making adjustments and constantly evolving. So that's the first one, is making sure that as things continue to evolve, as the industry, because really the industry that I'm in, digital and online advertising, I mean, Facebook started in 2007. That's
right.
TikTok is only several years old, and we have some clients on there. LinkedIn's advertising platform is relatively new. And so part of why it's been an advantage is, well, it's been amazing to get in this industry because it is constantly changing. And while that was an advantage for me to be able to learn and get in and be just as competitive as other companies, the other challenge is that it is an evolve or die kind of business that I'm in. You either have to be able to keep up and be able to adapt and build and leverage those changes instead of complain about them in your processes, or you need to find a different industry. And so that's one challenge. And I would say for us, continuing extended education is critical for my team, and not university either. Actually, it's harder for me sometimes in many cases to untrain someone that's gotten their master's and that is getting fed outdated information. Then, so for us, I'm a verified partner with Facebook. So we're on the phone with them at least every week and emailing them back and forth, getting information in real time. And we are continuing to build those relationships with LinkedIn, with Pinterest, to have that kind of access and Pinterest and LinkedIn. We do have that relationship. So continuing to invest in those for those crisis calls and being able to mitigate all of those things that happen. And then the other challenge, I think, is really going to be myself and getting in my own way and becoming the first employee that I hired. I had realized that I had somewhat management experience, but it was managing tenants and managing volunteers and not employees. That's livelihood, and their future is a huge part of what my organization is able to provide them. And so that's a very sobering reality to come to terms with. And so I would say the other biggest challenge is, as our company grows, and it's grown substantially since the business started, the other big challenge will be making sure that I am the leader that the organization needs, and that not only as the organization grows, I need to grow, and I need to make sure that every single day I am becoming a capable leader. Because I mean, I knew, and I started this, when you're starting a business, and you want to be a CEO, I mean, you can't just apply for CEO jobs, you have no experience. And so in that way, I'm very green too. And so I would say that's the other challenge, is just making sure that I I'm continuing to be that person and constantly evolving. And then for that, it's continuing to work with a coach and making sure that I have somebody keeping me in check, holding me accountable. And as most importantly, that outside set of eyes that's removed from the organization to be able to see things that I wouldn't see.
That's awesome. So you made me think of Jim Rohn. He's got a few quotes.
I love Jim Rohn.
But the one that comes to mind for this conversation and the challenges you just shared is we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So as you think about his quote, is that something that excites you or makes you nervous when you think of where you're taking your business?
Oh my goodness, Tim, it's both. It really is both because I love that quote. It's so accurate and so true. And what's exciting is that we constantly have the ability to up level and it's a fun challenge to be in different communities, but it's also very hard to say goodbyes. And I've been in, I've done those a few times to where I've been in groups or networking groups or paid like different masterminds or different things to where we all started on the same trajectory. And some of us are here and some of us really wanted to stay in our comfort zone down lower. Yes. And those have been the moments that it has been so hard because I love and I value those relationships and I still do. But I realized that my time as we started to hit different milestones in the company is so precious. But like when you're feeding people that don't have the same values and the same goals as you, I mean, you do, like, as Jim Rohn says, you tend to kind of level out. And so there have been hard times where I've had to say, I guess goodbyes to groups or commitments that I made that were incredible. They served that purpose in that season, but to get to where I want to go and to keep climbing that mountain, they were no longer in alignment. So it's a bittersweet thing. Because just like in life, all seasons do eventually end. And so while it's amazing and it's always exciting to go into the other one, I've had to really learn to cherish those, to look back at those and to glean what was out, but also to be expected and excited for what's coming next.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned comfort zone. So everything that we want out of life is always on the other side of our comfort zone. So to your point, right, if we're surrounding ourselves with people who want to stay in their comfort zone, then we're not going to have, that encouragement and that motivation and that push and drive to get there. And you mentioned it a few times throughout this interview that, if we're not constantly growing to become the next version of ourselves, then our employees don't grow because we're not, we're not providing an example for them. So, and yes, somebody that was perfect for us at some point in time in our journey may not be the right fit for us anymore. And, one of the things that my coach says to me is you have to look at your coach. And if they don't have a coach and they're not investing in their own personal growth and development, then at some point in time, you're going to outgrow them. And so, her perspective to me was, Tim, just make sure that you're continually growing and learning as a person. So, you can stay in front of your clients. And so I have 3 coaches because there's, different areas of my own personal growth and development that I know I need to keep focusing on. So I love that perspective, Ashley. Thank you so much for sharing that. So last question here. If something catastrophic happened in your business today, who's the first person you'd call and what would that conversation be?
Of course, Tim, it would be to a coach. It would be to my coach. And I would goodness, that conversation would probably be a fit of panic and overwhelm of what is happening. What do I do? All the emotions in that conversation would be a very humbling and probably patient conversation, but then also that amazing sting of accountability. So what are you going to do about it? Let's get all the emotions out. Let's process this. Let's handle the freakouts and the crisis, but then let's not get off the phone until we at least, not that because it never will, all those fires will never be fixed overnight, but what is the next step that you are going to take today, no matter how hard, no matter how much you want to procrastinate and not do the hard thing, what is that next step? So I imagine it would probably be me rambling about something that maybe isn't even as big of a deal as it needs to, coming to reality and being reminded that, okay, this happens. You are not the only anomaly that things like this happen to. Businesses have challenges every single day. So now that you know all this, what are you going to do about it?
I love it. So,
Thank
Ashley, you've been blessed with some incredible people in your journey that have helped you along the way. If they were all on the show here today, what would you want to say to them?
Oh my goodness. I would just tell them thank you. I have so much gratitude and truly what like you said, we are the sum of the people that we surround ourselves with, and their investment to my life and contribution that has been so selfless, going above and beyond to really help me has been invaluable, not just to the organization, but to me personally. And for that, I am just forever grateful and committed to paying that forward.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, Ashley, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you
Really
so much.
enjoyed all of your stories and insights and just your bubbly personality.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
So, to everyone who tuned in today, thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campbell. Be sure to help us spread this movement by liking this show and posting it on your social media. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure to pay it forward, as Ashley said, and I'll see you next time. Take care.